news. Tune in for Commodity Week with a review of the week's markets at 8:30 in the morning, all on WHOW, AM, FM, and streamed online.
DeWitt County's #1 source for local news is on the air and online 24 hours a day. The latest local news stories are heard every hour on Central Illinois' news station, the Big 1520 AM and 92.3 FM WHOW. Stream live at DeWittDailyNews.com. They're also heard every hour on the station that's your easy choice, 95.9 FM WEZC. And to read the latest local news on your electronic device, including tablets, iPhones, and smartphones, go to DeWittDailyNews.com. DeWitt County's #1 source for local news is on the air, online, 24 hours a day.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Top of the morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. My guest in studio this morning is Curt Homann. He's the executive director of the DeWitt County Development Council. The morning show today streaming to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin insurance agent in Clinton. And Curt, I'm sure folks are excited to hear from you this morning because a lot's been going on in your world. How you been lately, by the way?
I'm doing fantastic. Yeah. Thank you so much.
For sure. Well, we've got, a couple of weeks ago, it came out that a manufacturer wants to come to DeWitt County and take over a vacant building on I guess that's the east side of town. So give us the details. What's going on here?
Yeah, so a few months ago, Kwik-Wall reached out, and just like a lot of our business contacts that come in, you're quick to answer questions and do some preliminary work. Mm-hmm. Probably 9 times out of 10, those are simply inquiries. Mm-hmm. But you answer questions, you follow up, you do all those things. Well, this one kept going on, and which is always a good sign. And Clinton certainly made the top of the list. So, great news for Clinton.
So Kwik-Wall comes. They're going to occupy the former RR Donnelly building, correct?
Correct. Yeah, so, ultimately, it's a great, if the facility wasn't there, Clinton and DeWitt County wouldn't have been on the radar, so that needed to be the case and be available. Fortunately, it was in this case. And, from there it was working out the details. Mm-hmm. So what would it look like for Kwik-Wall to be here? What would their challenges be for them to come here? Mm-hmm. What do they need? What will they need to do to the building? I mean, it's all of these questions, permits, zoning, all of those things that you dive into, to make sure that what they need to get done can get done. Mm-hmm. So
yeah. We've heard about that kind of renovation of that building that needs to take place for them to occupy. For that to happen, it sounds like a lot of working behind the scenes on some tax abatement and things like that. I don't know if you're at liberty to tell us how that process is going.
No, absolutely. So, to start out with a little bit, I was on a webinar a week or two ago, and ironically, one of the things that they mentioned, for smaller communities is you don't go after manufacturing. It's a waste of time. And, and knowing what we had going on, I just kind of had to chuckle through that advice that small communities were given. But the reality of it is small communities don't have huge bank books to be able to incentivize manufacturers, and that's why that comment was made. Manufacturers across the U.S. are heavily incentivized to locate into a community. We don't have those heavy deep pockets and funds, so we had to work around what we could do, and a tax abatement was an exceptional way to help them alleviate some of their costs, while still being very respectful of the community at large in terms of tax base and those types of things.
Sure. Well, and so let's go back a little bit here, Curt, and you give us the backstory. How did this come about? What was DCDC's role in this? It sounds like it's been going on for a while. So what's been going on?
Yeah. So realistically, this was an interesting one because knowing the competitive nature of attracting manufacturers, I had to be as tight-lipped as possible about this. So, the taxing bodies weren't aware of this. My board wasn't even aware of this. I mean, I could not risk any word getting out to a competitive community. And so it all had to be very, very, very quiet until the very last minute. So, but ultimately, what we tried to match is, what were their objections with coming to Clinton and DeWitt County?
Okay.
So what were their costs going to be? So there's significant costs in the building with some roof repairs. They've got to upgrade electrical. The type of walls that they're going to be building to ship out are pretty substantial size. So they're going to have to cut into the sides of the building, make bigger overhead doors to get those out of the building.
Oh, wow.
So so there's probably $1.5–2 million of cost just in renovations to get ready to build product. So ultimately it's okay. Maybe a large community would say, well, we'll pay those for you. Well, unfortunately, we don't have $2 million sitting around for those types of projects. I wish we did. But then the question is, okay, well, how can we help? How can we make those costs less difficult, less challenging for a new business coming in? So tax abatements is a fantastic way to do that. So over the course of 5 years, it's a fairly significant number. They could go to a lender, advance those dollars if they needed to, or just offset those costs over a few years period of time.
Yeah.
But the discussion did come up. Well, what cash incentive can you hand us? The date we start working, and really that really wasn't an option for us in DeWitt County. So we had to be creative and find a way that would work.
Yeah.
But in that regard, I feel like I'm very responsive to people that inquire about anything, regardless of the size, whatever their question is. I try to get back to them. But in this case, there was a lot of conversations, and part of it was the quickness and the response time was almost immediate. So if I was with someone, I could literally text and say, hey, I'm with someone, I'll call you back in a half hour or something along those. And I will tell you that went a really long way in this situation. So, had he met someone in another county that had an economic development board that was on top of following up on all those details, the outcome could have been a little bit different. So
your responsiveness maybe propelled
absolutely.
this along.
It was. I think it was a huge factor. I think it's one of the factors they decided to leave. Relocate out of where they're at now is that they weren't getting that responsiveness elsewhere. And one of the benefits here is they're really important to our community and our county. So
and they will be,
and they always will be. So they're going to get quick responses always
when they call up City Hall.
Whoever it is, absolutely.
They call you up, they'll get a response. Yeah, and that's what I was wondering as you were talking there is like, what, I mean, not that DeWitt County doesn't have good space for this place, but I'm just curious, like, what made DeWitt County, such an appealing place when they're, they could have gone to, maybe Chicago or Champaign or Bloomington, all these places they could have gone to. I was just kind of curious what made DeWitt County appealing to them.
Absolutely. The building was number one, and then number two was the immediate answers to questions and follow up. And even if we didn't know the answers, we would dive into them.
Interesting.
And that played a huge role. And then again, them being able to, they could have got a better, they could get a better incentive package again in a bigger community. But that was important, but it wasn't the primary factor, obviously.
Well, kudos to you for that, and that's a huge victory for DCDC. I mean, I feel like it is at least.
It is. I mean, it's one that's very visible. Certainly, it's one that everybody knows about. People that kind of pay attention, and we're not always real vocal. A lot of the work that we do is behind the scenes. It's one-on-one. This one makes media reports, and people that don't pay attention in this case couldn't help but pay attention, and it is rewarding to see someone that doesn't normally pay any attention to economic development say, hey, good job. This is a great thing for Clinton. This is a great thing for DeWitt County.
Sure.
It does make you feel good, and it certainly I think everything that we've done prior to this point has been extraordinarily valuable, but this certainly takes, a lot of people notice this. That's for sure.
For sure. Well, what's kind of still to come then in the work ahead to make this place fit for them?
Yeah, so we got to finalize the tax abatements. So as you reported, Joe Whitty with the county was on, and they agreed to do a reimbursement of their share of the taxes. We'd have the city of Clinton and and the school board or the school district up and coming, and I think they've been very positive about what they'll do, and so we anticipate that they're on board with tax abatements as well. And then it's the smaller ones, and then ultimately they close on the building, they get to work, and we get them opened, and we help with job fair for employees and whatever we need to do to get them up and running as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
Sure. Yeah, that job fair, that's an interesting topic you bring up. I feel like we should talk about the job openings and workforce.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excuse me, at some point. But in terms of their timeline, do they have a timeline on when they'd like to be up and operational?
Well, they have a big contract that they need to fulfill with a Florida location early spring of 2026. Ultimately, those panels need to be produced in the new location, and so I think their aggressive goal would be that they're working in August, but I think by the end of the year, very first of the year, December, January is probably very realistic.
Gotcha.
So,
gotcha. Very good. What did I miss in that conversation, Curt?
I mean, honestly, I'd mentioned earlier off air that we don't get to pick and choose the companies that come here or who takes an interest, but this is one that if we could pick, we would absolutely say, yeah, we would love to have them come in. So number of jobs, they don't. The pay is good. The employees don't leave typically. So they typically stay. They like working there. The ownership has taken a real positive attitude towards the communities that they're in, with sponsorships and those types of things. And the caveat there is, anyone listening, please be respectful of that. They're going to spend $5-6 million immediately. So those things will come, so that, they won't come day one, but those things will absolutely come. And, it's just the type of business that you want that provides people with a good standard of living and gives back to the community that they're in. And, you couldn't ask for anything better than that.
Gotcha. Very good. Well, look forward to it, Curt, and congratulations to DCDC. I know, there's probably many hands and many folks that had a hand in this, but congratulations to you all on a big victory
thank you.
For the organization. Very good. Curt Homann, DeWitt County Development Council Executive Director, in studio with us. More to come with Curt on The Morning Show.
WHOW.
Here's owner Dave Jackson from your Clinton Save-A-Lot on Inflation 2024.
All the big chains have fattened their margins tremendously, increasing their margins and piling on. That's one thing I don't do, is I do not pile on to a serious situation and go, well, I can get away with increasing things even more because the customer won't notice.
Despite inflation, you'll still save up to 40% on your food bill every day at your Clinton Save-A-Lot. And as Dave always says,
Hope to see you soon.
MR Systems Wireless is your local internet provider for Clinton and surrounding area. They have the products you want and the local service you deserve. MR Systems Wireless Internet service for home or business includes unlimited data, unlimited streaming, and unlimited calling. Plans start at just $48 a month and get a free Roku 4 lease with our media packages. Get the speed you need with MR Systems Wireless. Call them at 935-2100. That's 935-2100 for MR Systems Wireless.
Thank you for listening to this Miller Media Group radio station. We appreciate you making the choice to tune in to us. We want to remind you of some things to keep the attorneys happy. Our stations allow one winner per household in a 30-day period. Cash prizes are mailed to our winners within 30 days of winning. And, as you've probably already guessed, portions of today's programming on this Miller Media Group radio station were pre-recorded and are mechanically or digitally reproduced. There. Now we've made the attorneys happy. Thanks again for listening to this Miller Media Group station.
If the flu's got you down, the Warner Hospital and Health Services Walk-In Clinic inside Family Medicine can help you feel better fast. CEO Paul Skowron inviting you to make us your backup plan to better health. Find out more by clicking our icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
DeWittDailyNews.com is the area's leading local news source 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Get the latest local news, obituaries, police blotter, weather forecast, and more. Head to DeWittDailyNews.com to get the local information you need to know.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Once again, a good morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin insurance agent in Clinton. My guest in studio this morning is Curt Homann, Executive Director of the DeWitt County Development Council. And unless, Curt, you've got something urgent to ask or to talk about, I want to go back to the conversation about the Kwik-Wall coming to town. You mentioned to me before we got started, that's been taking up like 90% of your time for DCDC. Do you mind if I ask, like, why that is? Like, what's been so, like, got you hyper focused on that? So, I mean, what about that process has just taken up and absorbed your time?
Well, certainly the importance of it. There's no doubt about it.
Of course.
And it's really interesting. When business owners want to make decisions, they want to make them quickly. Mm-hmm. So,
really?
Yeah, pretty typically, yes. Once they make a decision to do something, they want to move on it. Mm. And so we had to get there was a lot of conversations, a lot of things lined up behind the scenes. There's some work I'm doing with the state of Illinois to hopefully also incentivize the move here to Clinton.
Okay.
And so there's that work that's involved. There was conversations, text, phone calls at all different times of the night. So, my job isn't an 8 to 5 job or a 9 to 4, 9 to 6.
Even though you're a part-time executive.
Absolutely. So,
executive
I mean,
director.
there are messages that were after 10 p.m. at night. There were phone calls. We had a birthday celebration within our house, and there was an hour-long phone call that night. So it's just there's just a lot that goes on, and then the importance of, okay, I need to make sure, even though it's 8 o'clock at night, I need to make sure the next morning I'm on this with someone at the state of Illinois or someone that can help handle this for us. So it was a lot of focus, a lot of conversation. I couldn't tell. I mean, 100, I don't know. I mean, the conversations that the owner and I had, meeting at the facility, just all kinds of questions and research about, traffic patterns and those types of things. So, I mean, it is
off a major road there.
It is, there'll be a lot of traffic coming in and out of there, and we want to make sure it's safe. And, so there's discussions about,
that's another thing I was asking.
Things.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Nope.
That's another thing I was wondering about, like, and I don't mean to speak poorly, but like it feels like the roads back in that area of town could be improved. Like, is that at all part of what could take place back there?
I think anything's up for discussion, but the primary concern that he and I and both had is we want it to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the primary. We don't want accidents. We don't want that. So we did pass that on to say, hey, do some studies on this and see what can be done there.
I see.
Those won't take place prior to them, making the decision, but that's certainly part of the discussion. The one that everybody asked me about is the baseball fields, and
what about them?
Well, they're included with that property that are right next to there. So everyone wants to know what's gonna happen. What's gonna happen with the baseball fields? That's probably the biggest question I get asked, believe it or not. And fortunately, he's very community minded, and he's certainly not going to plow those fields under. He's already even talked about ways to improve the fields.
Yeah.
Donating some materials to improve those fields. But
nice.
So it's a very positive experience. But those were a lot of conversations, believe it or not, that really had nothing to do with the business.
Yeah.
With the exception is that they will now own those baseball fields right next to it. So.
Is there an avenue of this process that you had to go down that maybe the public wouldn't have even thought about? Like the baseball field stuff. Like that's one to me. Like I wouldn't even have thought about that.
So every business situation is different. And this one was unique in the fact that I have a pretty good idea of what a business is, going through in terms of what they're doing. If it's, whatever they're selling a product, it's easy for me to see some of their needs. This one I really didn't. This one I had to ask. I had to ask those questions. I couldn't assume anything, and maybe I shouldn't ever. But in this case, I don't know anything about manufacturing portable walls. So their business was unique in that regard and large in that regard, and ultimately I had to ask a lot of questions and help interact solutions ultimately.
Gotcha.
But again, I can go back to responsiveness, but I don't know if there's things that people would think about or wouldn't think about in this case. I'm not sure I would have, if I could have picked ahead of time. I need to make sure I'd ask this.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of conversation.
Because it was a learning process for you at the same time.
And I think any unique business like this would be, and it was a learning process for them. They're focused on what they do.
Yeah.
And so putting our heads together and just discussing through potential issues and ways to solve those, that's what I do. That's my job. If it's a tiny business or a huge business, that's the same.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, every year at the end of the year, I go through and I find, all the data I can collect from Facebook and from our website and all the traffic. The RR Donnelly building closing at the first of last year was the top story from last year
for sure
on our website. And that was, to have it filled in a year is pretty remarkable.
That building could very easily have sat empty for 5-10 years. It could have become an eyesore. There was already some roof problems. Roofs don't fix themselves. They only create bigger problems when they go bad. At some point that building could have been uninhabitable or a tremendous expense. So, the fact that someone had some interest in it right away and it's a successful company that, we expect to continue to grow, is a huge factor for Clinton and DeWitt County. And I could tell you, I'm already thinking about their expansion plans that are going to be 5 to 10 years down the road.
Oh, wow.
So it's okay. How do we make that work? How can we put the infrastructure to make that work, in the future? Now, maybe they won't have them, but we need to be prepared. We absolutely need to be prepared for them so that, if they're going to expand, we don't want them to add another manufacturing place outside of DeWitt County. We want them to stay right here with this one and any additionals.
Curt, best way for folks to learn about all things DCDC.
Reach out anytime, 217-935-5271. Follow us on Facebook.
Curt Homann, Executive Director of the DeWitt County Development Council, in studio with us.
WHOW.